As requested, we will continue to provide comparative videos of different breeds, for which we have already gathered a long list of your requests. In this film, we compare two long-standing, hugely sized, highly respectable-looking LGD dog breeds, comparing the Turkmen Alabai with the Turkish Kangal. In order to explore this properly and thoroughly, we also need to touch on the topic of whether there is any difference between the Alabai and the Central Asian Shepherd dogs, and if there is, what are these differences? At the end of the video, we will also let you know, in the comparison of which two breeds we asked for the help of an expert in the form of an interview in the next part. Well, whether it's Alabai or Kangal, for a dog lover, it's quite a fascinating sight and experience to observe and study these dogs up close. In general, individuals of both breeds radiate a kind of inexplicable primordial force, and both breeds provoke a kind of instinctive respect, even among those who are not really familiar with dogs. Both are considered giant breeds. In the majority of people, their proximity creates fear and caution. For example, during a filming session, the two of us accidentally stayed in a confined space with 4 alabais carefully walking and sniffing around us. The owner of the kennel returned to the scene in less than 2 minutes, after which it became necessary for us to take a break from filming in order for our blood pressure to return to normal. If we start with the description of the alabais, we must first answer the question whether Alabai is classified as a separate breed, or they are identical to the Central Asian Shepherd dogs. There are two positions here, one of which is the official position of the FCI. According to this, there is one breed, the Central Asian Shepherd dog, which is considered to be a Russian dog breed. FCI refers to Alabais as a subvariant common mainly in Turkmen territories. In contrast, the Turkmens believe that Alabai means the shepherd dogs found in Turkmenistan that have evolved and worked in this area for centuries. According to the Turkmens' point of view, the today's Russian Central Asian Shepherd is a watered-down version of the original Alabai dogs, who were mixed with other shepherd dog types, and who by now has lost the working capacity of its ancestors. Between these two claims, we cannot do justice. Nevertheless, the shepherd dog experts we interviewed earlier tended to confirm the truthfulness of the Turkmen position. If you are interested in this interview, you can watch it by clicking on the upper right corner of the screen. Regardless of today's definition debates, the claim that today's Alabais are descendants of the dog breed with the oldest history in the world seems true. For thousands of years, nomadic peoples in the Central Asian region have been able to use these dogs' ancestors as guardians of the huge flocks nomadizing here, that is, as livestock guardians. During excavations in the territory of present-day Turkmenistan, among the ruins of a settlement dating back to around 2000 BC, not only bone artifacts identical to the today's Alabais, but also a terracotta statuette shaped like these dogs were also found. If we talk about the formation of Kangals, the past here is somewhat more clear, although both the Turks and the Kurds claim the breed as their own. Nowadays, the major international dog organizations clearly associate this breed with Turkey, especially with the vicinity of the town of Kangal, the center of the Shivas region, from where its name originates. It is a real curiosity that according to recent DNA tests, the closest relatives of the Kangals are made up of other shepherd dogs from Central Asia, such as Turkmen Alabais and their ancestors, and even today's kinologists agree that the ancestors of the Kangals may have entered the territory of present-day Turkey during the migrations of the former nomadic Turks. The acquisition and tour of objective knowledge about Kangals is further complicated by the fact that in the recent decades Turkish marketing has been incredibly effective in the international promotion of this dog breed. Partly because of this, and partly because of the truly excellent abilities of the Kangals, there are few breeds of dogs that are surrounded by as many positive myths and legends as they are. After all this, what are the similarities and differences between the Alabais and the Kangals? As already mentioned, both breeds have a giant stature, so there is no significant difference between the weight and height data between the two dogs. Although, according to the opinion of shepherd dog experts, the real working ability of dogs performing their original functions is significantly reduced above 50 to 60 kilograms, the phenomenon of continuous increase of body size can be observed in both breeds. In the case of Alabai, mainly due to the increase in the number of exhibition lines, and in the case of Kangal, due to the fashion wave of recent years. For both breeds, a clear trend is that a decreasing proportion of them represent the original, active shepherd dog range, and an increasing proportion of them meet the, in quotes, the biggest is better expectation of our time. When it comes to differences, it can generally be said that the Alabais have a more quadratic body structure, with a shorter back and a larger muscle mass, while the Kangals' torso is longer and stretched and their limbs are longer than those of the Alabai, and their muscles are also more plastically distributed. When it comes to the character and behavior of the two breeds, the first fact to note is that, due to their past, the instincts of the two types are very much the same, although they have changed a lot compared to their original goals and job. According to the shepherd dog experts we interviewed, in the case of today's individuals, perhaps the Kangals have better preserved the heritage and instincts of their ancestors, and the Kangals perform better when they have to perform classical LGD or shepherd dog functions next to the flock, especially if they have to perform these tasks in large geographical spaces. Today, Alabais are increasingly used in territory and real estate guarding tasks with great success, where the spaces are smaller and the larger individuals of today can fulfill these tasks, since there is no need for walks of several tens of kilometers per day next to the flocks anymore. With regard to both breeds, it should be noted that during their formation, in the ancient nomadic cultures, everyday life included the fighting of the strongest individuals with each others, with which, in fact, the future pack leaders were selected in this way. Both breeds preserve this heritage today. Both Alabai and Kangal are huge fighters and extremely dominant dog breeds. Partly because of this, none of them are very tolerant and friendly with other dogs and animals, while other animals growing up in the same household with them are protected by them in a manner appropriate to a good shepherd dog. In the reviews on Kangals, there is a regular emphasis on the outstanding, in some opinion, unprecedented bite power of this breed, the veracity of which is not called into question by us. The extent of these measurements is usually around 750 to 800 psi. The only factor that warns us sometimes is that the source of these measurements is almost exclusively Turkish information, also in the English literature. In the case of the Alabai, we did not find official measurement data, but perhaps we are not mistaken if we put them in the vicinity of 550 to 600 psi, which is the average of large shepherd dogs. Summing up what has been said so far, in the case of Alabai and Kangal, we are dealing with two varieties whose ancestors are most likely to be traced back to common great-great-grandfathers, and where they jointly protected the flocks of nomadic Turks. Later, despite geographical differences, similar tasks were performed for centuries, perhaps for thousands of years. One of them, the Alabai, became the founding line of the modern Central Asian shepherd dog recognized by the Russians, and the other became the peak pride of Turkish dog breeding, around whom almost a whole mythological circle was built in the online space, not least as a result of successful Turkish marketing. For different reasons, none of them are now used, or at least less and less, as a classic shepherd dog, for which, due to their significant weight gain, their suitability is also questionable, especially in the case of the Alabai. In our modern age, Alabais found their place primarily as show dogs, secondly as territory and property guard dogs. The Kangals found their place to a lesser extent as show dogs, and part of them are still used as working dogs. For both breeds, a typical trend is the constant increase in size and weight, which is not good for the working ability of either types, but perhaps affects the abilities of Alabais more. Due to their past, dominance and strength, and despite present trends, neither breed is recommended for inexperienced dog owners, for mimosa souls in particular, and keeping both breeds requires a lot of space, experience, and a strong personality. In the next part, you will hear and see an interview, when we ask an expert to talk about the similarities and differences between the Hungarian Commandors and the South Russian Shepherd dogs. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you for your attention.